talk and welcome. In this talk, we are going to talk about Kubeapps, your one-stop shop to deploy and manage Helm application. Before we start, very quick, a little bit about us. We are Andres and me, Juan. We used to work for Vietnam, now VMware, and we've been working on Kubernetes and Helm applications related projects for 3-4 years. Andres is the current maintainer of 2 projects, Kubeless and Kubeapps, and I'm mainly focused on application packaging in different formats. One of them, of course, Helm charts. Regarding Vietnam, you may know us. For those of you that don't know us, we are basically a company that is focused on packaging applications on very different format, from single VMs, installers, containers, Helm charts, whatever it comes next. And we have a catalog around 150 applications, open source applications that we offer for everyone. And apart from that, we have other Kubernetes related projects, such as Kubeless, which is a serverless offering for Kubernetes, Kubeapps, the one we are presenting here, Seal Secret, which is a way to encrypt the secrets that you have in your cluster, and BKPR, which is a way to make your cluster production ready. And now, as we are part of VMware, we are also collaborating with the HepTO team. So we have people like Joe Vita, one of the founders of Kubernetes, helping us to improve all our Kubernetes products. If you have any questions regarding these other projects that we are not going to talk about them, please feel free to come to us. And we will be happy to talk about them. Okay, so let's focus on Kubeapps. What is Kubeapps? Here we have a very fancy definition which says it's a web-based UI for deploying and managing applications in Kubernetes clusters. What does it mean? I like to think of Kubeapps as a marketplace. The same way that in our phones, when we want to install an application, we go to Google Play or App Store, and we find for the application we want to install, and we install it. Okay, this is more or less the experience that we are used to. So with Kubeapps, we try to do the same, but with Helm applications, with charts. So with Kubeapps, you can browse the application that you are interested in. You can deploy that application in your cluster. You can inspect that application, review all the values, the parameters that specific chart offers you. And you can also do some day 2 operations, such as upgrades, remove the application, and also you can do some rollbacks. We will talk about it. It's an open source project. Here you have the link to GitHub. So you are more than welcome to contribute to the project. And now we are going to talk a little bit about each of these features that Kubeapps offer and how you can do it. So we mentioned that with Kubeapps, you can browse applications. Okay. When you launch Kubeapps, by default, it's going to look for Helm charts in the official repository. It means it's going to go to the official stable repo, the official incubator repo, and it's going to look for applications there. But let's say that you have your own charts and you have them in your own repository. Kubeapps also allows you to add your own repos, so you can discover and deploy them through the same web UI. So at this moment, you can add almost every repo that you have. We have documentation for adding your repo if you have it implemented with Chart Museum or Harbor or JFrog Artifactory, and it's really simple. You will see later that it's really simple to add your own repo and browse your custom charts. And as we mentioned, once that you browse for the application that you are interested in, let's say that you want to deploy MariaDB. You just need to look for it. Then you customize the parameters, the values YAML that you want to use to deploy that application. And once you are happy with it, you just need to deploy and start operating it. You will be able to run upgrades, rollback, etc. And as we said, really simple day 2 operations. Let's say that I already launched MariaDB in my cluster. If I want to run an upgrade, this web UI also offers me the possibility to run an upgrade, modify the values, or run the latest chart, or whatever I want to do to run the upgrade, run it. And in case that, for some reason, I did something wrong, I will be able also to run rollbacks. OK, so let's show a little demo about what I mentioned so far. Oh. So I already have a Kubeapps running on my Minikube cluster. So the first thing I'm going to do is to access Kubeapps. To do so, I didn't deploy it with Ingress, so yes, I'm going to do just a port forward. So if I run the port forward, and then I open a browser, I will be requested to log in into Kubeapps. When you log into Kubeapps, you need to identify yourself. So I have already a service account associated to me, so I just need to grab a token associated to that service account. So once I get the token, I can log in into the cluster, into Kubeapps. And I will be able to play around the web UI. I will be able to search for applications, go to my different catalogs, etc. So as I mentioned, we can add our custom catalogs. So at this moment, you just need to go to configuration, go to application repositories. And at this moment, I have all these catalogs already installed in Kubeapps. I have the stable one, the incubator one, I added the dynamic one. And I also have this one here that, as you can see, it's a chart museum repo that I previously added. But if you want to add your custom repo, you just need to click on Add Repository, add the name, the URL, add your authentication if needed, and install the repo. And it will be that easy. You will be able to browse applications within your chart repository. So let's say that I want to deploy an application that I have in my custom repo called my chart museum. If I go there, I already upload a chart, which I call my custom Nginx. So I just need to click on the chart that I want to deploy. Here I can analyze the README file. And once you click on deploy, you choose the version. Let's say I want to deploy the version 100 and a name. Let's say my release Nginx. And you can modify the values YAML that, as if you were, locally installing through Helm. So let's say that we want a couple of replicas. So you just need to click on submit, and after a while, Kubeapps is going to be checking the state of the application, and once it's ready, it will deploy here ready. To do so, it's checking the available replicas and the desired replicas. Once you meet the desired replicas, it will consider the application ready. So as you can see here, it's alerting me that there is an upgrade. This is because I installed the version 100, and Kubeapps detected that there is a new version of this chart. So it's going to tell me, hey, there is a new version, you should run an upgrade. So let's do it. If I run an upgrade and I say, okay, now I want one replica, and I'm going to use like a new tag for my Nginx. Let's say custom tag. So I deploy another image for Nginx. If I do it, I will notice that my application is not going to be healthy. Why? Because the custom type that I introduced doesn't exist. So it's going to try to download the image. The image doesn't exist, and the pod are not going to be ready never. So once I do this, as I mentioned, we can do rollbacks. So whenever we detect that something is wrong, we just can go here, run a rollbacks, go back to revision 1, and with the same experience that we have with Helm, we will have it, but through this web UI. Okay? And with this, which is like the basic things that you can do with Kubeapps, I will pass the turn to Andres, who is going to talk about security stuff and more advanced feature of Kubeapps. There you go.
Okay, so that was awesome. But life is a little bit more difficult. So if you have experience with Helm, you may know that handling tiller is a little bit tricky. Mostly because you actually want to deploy anything that you want as a Helm chart. And if you want to do so, you need to give tiller some admin privileges. So what happens if you put an admin tiller and you allow people to access that tiller? The problem is if you have a multi-tenant cluster in which you have different users that are only allowed to access specific namespaces, I'm going to throw this away. If they are only allowed to access their namespace, they can actually access tiller and install whatever they want on the cluster, which is an obviously security issue. To avoid that, you can follow the Helm security the good practices for security, and they tell you to install tiller, but using a certificate, a TLS certificate. So only the people that can access that certificate are able to access tiller. So that's what we are going to do, and from that moment, people are not allowed to access tiller. But that's not the end of the problem, because if you install Kubeapps, and you allow Kubeapps, obviously, to access tiller, and you give Kubeapps the certificate, you also need to protect people from accessing things that they are not allowed to. For doing that, what we are doing is resolving the manifest that are related to a chart. So let's say that this first user want to install WordPress. He's going to go to Kubeapps, he's going to click on WordPress, and we are going to resolve that. That means that he's going to deploy a deployment in that namespace. He's going to deploy whatever. And then using RBAC, we are going to check if that's really possible. In case it's not possible, we are going to report it and tell the user, okay, contact your administrator to give you some permissions. For demonstrate, well, first. So now you're closer to production, okay? You have a secure cluster, you have your multi-tenant cluster, but what else? As you have seen from Juan's demo, when you log in, you need a Kubernetes access token. This is not something really simple for non-technical people or people that doesn't have access to this cluster. So to avoid that, you can integrate this with single sign-on, with a single sign-on experience. So people can log in with their Gmail account or with their GitHub account. And the good thing about this is that if you are already using an identity provider, some people are already using Keycloak, or if you are a big company and you are using Azure Active Directory for managing permissions, you can use the same system to handle permissions in your Kubernetes cluster. This is really useful because you have just one centralized point to manage those permissions. Also, another thing is that if for some reason someone leaks his token, the problem with that token is that it never expires, the token related to a service account. So if you want to revoke that token, you may need to revert all the certificates, and it's quite messy if you need to roll back that or to delete that. But in the case of an OpenID token, that token expires. The next day, the next week, or the next hour, that's not going to be valid anymore, which is a relief in that case. But here I wanted to mention that we are not reinventing the wheel. At the end of the day, what we are going to do is to map an email account to a certain RBAC role in Kubernetes. So for managing permission in Kubernetes, you're still going to use RBAC, which is the default solution for authorization, authentication, or for authorization. So let me show you this. I have another demo prepared for this. So I'm going to switch microphones. Let me open a new. Well, first of all, I have protected Tiller with this certificate. So if you try to access Tiller, you're not going to be able to do so because you don't have the certificate. But if you actually use the certificate, here you can see all the releases. So okay, let's log in Kubeapps. For that, I'm using HTTPS and I'm using an OpenID Connect single sign-on experience. So I'm going to log in with my GitHub account. So let's enter my GitHub account. This is my real GitHub account. And I need my authorization code. Awesome. As you can see, I'm using my GitHub account to enter Kubeapps. At this point, I'm using a rollback, a Kubernetes role, but associated with my email account using GitHub. I can see the release that Juan entered before. So let's try to deploy something. This one, for example. If I try to deploy, this is going to check if I'm able to do all the things that this chart contains. And if it doesn't, hopefully it's what happens.
Yeah.
Not really. The connection is a bit slow. There. It's telling me that I'm not able to create config maps, I'm not able to create services, I'm not able to create stateful sets. So let's solve that. Let's go back and let's create a cluster role binding. I'm going to be super admin, that is very powerful admin, and I'm associating it with my email account. Once I do this, I should be able to deploy this application. That's great. So let's continue. You're closer now to production. You have everything ready. So, from the current slide. So what else do you need in the way to production? I don't know if you are running workloads in production. Once you reach the point in which you need to deploy a database or something with a state, it's kind of tricky if you want to do that using Kubernetes deployment, Kubernetes, persistent volumes, and so. So usually what you do when you reach this point is to go to AWS and use RDS, or go to Azure and use Azure SQL Database, or any of the solutions that they manage everything for you, and you don't need to worry. And you don't need to have the expertise that is really a big point of these technologies. The good thing about this is that there is something called the Kubernetes Service Catalog that allows you to deploy, for example, an RDS instance just using Kubernetes entities. So you can deploy a custom resource that is a RDS instance or a Azure SQL instance, and that is going to spin up it's going to talk to the provider, it's going to deploy everything, and you don't need to worry about anything. And then you can view the credentials to access that service. It's really useful. And we, in Kubeapps, we have support for that. You can actually use the same web UI to deploy these service instances, so you can very easily plug this together. So let me do the demo again. Did I close the other one? Yeah. If I go to the configuration, you can see here they have installed the Azure Service Broker. Okay? This allows me to deploy anything that Azure exposes. Here you can see they have several MySQL databases. But here you can see the list of things that I can deploy. You can deploy Cosmos DB, MySQL, Postgres, whatever. So once you click on something, you just need to, well, this is not very complete, but neither this one. Okay, here, for example, you can select a different plan, like the basic tier, the one with more cores, or whatever is more specific for your use case. You give a name, IDB, and then you just follow this formulary that is automatically generated. Okay, once you do that, it takes some time, but you're going to end up with something like this. This is an instance of my SQL database, and then you can create something called a binding. These are just the credentials for this database. So if you click show, here you can see all the credentials for this instance that is running in Azure. So for using this, you just need to go to the catalog, search for your application that you want to use, deploy it, and then here there is a field, external database. You can actually take this input and fill these other fields in order to have it. It's really simple, and that's it. And you don't need to worry about running MariaDB, running MySQL, or running something with a state in your cluster. It's really useful for sure. So, okay, we still have a couple of minutes. What else? This is not the end. The project, obviously, a project you never finished. So what's next with Kubeapps? This is something that we are thinking on doing, but I want to clarify that you can help deciding what do you want to have here in the GitHub repository. But first of all, you have seen that for deploying something, you need to read these values.yaml, which may be not that friendly if you really need to know the chart and know what you're doing. And usually you just need to change the disk size, you just need to change the user and password, some basic things that is common for the application. We should be able to do this and deploy a very simple form in which you can just pick whatever the option you want. Also, something interesting is that we're thinking on how we can make it better to show the status of an application. Right now, we are just dumping all the information, like if you do Helm status. But we think we can do better. There is a new project called Project Octane from VMware. It's kind of a Kubernetes dashboard. But the cool thing about it is that it allows you to see resources like this. They are connected, and for example, for a deployment, you're able to see which parts are healthy, which parts are not. So it's really, really visible. So we may think of something similar for this, but instead of for specific resources, for the whole application. So you can have a one view for everything. And obviously, Helm v3. Helm v3 is there at the door. Once it's stable, once it's released, we will be able to add this, to add support for this. And probably we get rid of some issues related to Tiller and to all the security issues. So I think that's all. We still have a couple of minutes for questions if you want.
The Kubeapps running in the cluster, how are they able to talk to Tiller, which is secured by certificate?
Exactly. You have. So the question was if Kubeapps is protected with a certificate, how is Kubeapps able to contact it? You have to, for doing that, you need to deploy that certificate as a secret in the namespace in which you're running Kubeapps. If you do so, Kubeapps can be configured to use that TLS certificate and contact Tiller securely.
Just one more follow-up. We support only single chart deployment, not the multi-chart deployment where the requirement sample is multiple charts.
Exactly. Well, for example, in the case of WordPress, behind the scenes, you are deploying a MariaDB chart. It's a chart that has two charts. You can change the values of MariaDB of the requirement if you modify the main values.yaml. That is not trivial to know. It's something that people may miss. So that's why maybe with the form, with a new way of showing this form, we can help with that. It's not trivial right now to change. You can do that, but it's not trivial to know how to do that. Right now, no. Right now, you need it's just one instance of Kubeapps per cluster, because the configuration in which you tell it where's the Kubernetes API, it's in the configuration of Kubeapps. So it's just one cluster. More question? Yeah.
Is there a way to tie the service catalog step to the deployment? So can you say, give me a database, and then give me a WordPress that's with that database in one fell swoop?
Yes. So the question was if it's possible to tie a service instance and create directly, maybe if you select WordPress and say, okay, I want this WordPress with this service instance. Right now it's not possible, but maybe if we implement an easy way of doing so, we can do that using this simple form in which you can say, okay, I don't want the default database, I want a new instance created in Azure. Yeah, could be possible. And there is a first.
So, like you said, at one cluster we have one Kubeapps deployment, right? So, if I have different clusters, I have different GUIs to manage my tasks, right? So, can it get any better? Because there are already other options like Azure Catalog, which provides multi-cluster deployment.
Right. Yeah, sure. Obviously, that's a feature that can be done. That's why I can tell you go to the repository and push for that, and that it's something possible. It's just not implemented yet. No. Okay. Yeah, we are going to be around for the whole conference. So if you have any more questions related to anything, just ping us. Thank you for coming.
For your service bus integration, did you have to deploy, the catalogs are configured, right? But did you have to configure the service provisioning of like Kubeapps, or Kubeapps